Right. It is 7 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Got a motion by Councilmember Pershman
I'll second it.
and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Community comment. We do not have anyone from the community in here this evening. It does not look like there is anyone on the Zoom. So we'll move past that. We don't have any presentations and reports this evening, nor do we have any public hearings. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion by Councilmember McKnight.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving right along to business items. 8.1, the 2024 Utilities Project Authorization for Plans and Specifications. Mr. Schmidt, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, so we have the 2024 Utility Improvement Project in front of us tonight. This is to authorize the preparation of plans and specifications. This project is one that's on the CIP for 2024, so it's one that we've been planning on for a while now. But we have a little bit of a sense of urgency that we're trying to kind of accelerate the design and bidding phase in the fall of 2023. One thing I will note to some changes in the schedule here in a little bit, but basically we want to get it bid so we can get the components ordered for that. So the electrical and control components have a lead time associated with them, with the ultimate goal of having those improvements substantially completed before next summer when we have the higher water demand usage in the city. So that's kind of the reason for us bringing it here in August of 23 for a 24 project. But I'll just jump into the overview of the improvements right now. So two basic sites. It's the well 1 and 3 well house location, which is by Lions Park. And then the well 4 tower 2, which is up north of Fleet Farm, west of Lakeview Industries. So those are the two sites. The improvements are primarily associated with the electrical and SCADA controls pieces, so what's actually operating those facilities. So at well 1 and 3, we're looking to add an on-site backup generator with automatic transfer switch. Right now, Chad and his team, they use a portable pull-behind backup generator. That generator is only powerful enough to run one out of the 2 wells on that site, so it can run well 1 or well 3, but not both. This would have the capacity to run both those at the same time, so improving system reliability in the event of a power outage. So that's kind of the first piece of it. The second is a complete rehab of all the electrical and controls within that building. So that building was the original building that was constructed in 1988 when the city first got its first really city water distribution system. So it was a well on that site and then that well control building. So all those components are very old. They are completely obsolete. Chad's had to try to patch it together. Right now, we can't even operate well 3 without frequent failures. So Chad, you might want to talk about that a little bit, but it's a pretty urgent issue that we don't want to let go any longer. So Chad, do you want to add anything to that?
I would just give kind of a brief description of the electrical problems that we're having. What we think it is just disrupted power coming in, so it fluctuates greatly in one of those legs. We have 3 phases, or basically 3 wires coming into the building to run those wells, and this has really been going on for like the last 2 years consistently, and we just want to get it, up to speed and reliable to produce water whenever we need it.
So if that's happening, how are we coping with that right now?
So the fails come through a VFD. So there's a device, electronic device, that is built to protect the motor. Once it senses some of that fluctuation in energy, it actually shuts off. So we physically have to have a person go there, reset that VFD, and then it will run. So sometimes those fluctuations in power are not when the well is running, but it only alerts us when the well is called to run. Does that make sense? So if it's windy at night and that well comes on early in the morning, it's not gonna alarm us in the evening, it's gonna alarm us in the morning.
So is that, so could people be getting called in day and night?
Yes,
They come in and have to redo that or just get it going again?
reset it, yes.
Okay, okay.
That even happened this weekend, didn't it?
Yeah, it happened this weekend. It seems to be becoming more and more frequent. We've worked with the energy company, we've done diagnostics inside, outside power. It's just, the only thing we can think of is the two components. The old, original electrical components are not jiving with
They're not talking to
with
the new stuff?
new stuff,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Generational thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So getting that well reliably online and available to use is important. So we designed the system for one well out of service, but it's not a position you want to be in for very long. So if something else would happen to another well, you'd be in a tough position. So this morning when I met with Chad at the water treatment plant, all 6 wells were running except for well 3. So we definitely need to use them, and getting that one available is going to be important. So, so that's the electrical control piece of it. The SCADA communications, so how we are able to operate those devices, that can be done, at the water treatment plant. It can be done remotely through a program. So upgrading that, right now that's done via a SCADA antenna. So basically it's an FM transmitter that transmits a signal back and forth. That isn't a very reliable system. So now that fiber is available to many of our infrastructure areas in the city, this location included, we can hook it up to fiber, which is much more reliable for communicating back and forth. The piping gallery inside the well house itself, I included a picture in the memo. The pipe gallery is getting, that's all original components too, so there's valves that need to be replaced. We'd be replacing the piping at the same time, so you can see it's definitely aging and there's some leaks and stuff, so we want to kind of take care of all that at the same time. The HVAC system inside is very, what should I call it? Basic?
Can I ask a question about this picture?
Sure.
The coffee can or the Folgers, jug, are we dripping water into there? Is that how we're collecting water right
Two
now?
of them.
That is a leaking check valve on well number 1.
Okay.
So, yes. And there's also some old conduits. If you look down on the floor, there's some old conduits. They're trip hazards. So we try to prevent staff from walking in between the 2 pipes.
Okay.
Looks like we have a leaking can, too.
Yes. Or
Full-
we're using a
full
steel can.
That looks so nice and new. Thank you.
Yep. And then the last piece is, so 6th and Broadway, that's a pressure reducing valve we have at that intersection. That regulates the pressure from intermediate to low pressure zone in the city. And we have the opportunity with this project to actually hook that up to SCADA monitoring. So that is really nice to have, because right now we can monitor pressures at the water treatment plant in the high and intermediate zones, but we don't have pressure in the low zone. So once we get that online, we'll be able to see the pressure distribution through our whole system. So that was planned for as part of the 2017 project, but the fiber just wasn't available then. So there's a conduit that actually is already run up to the well house from 6th and Broadway, but it isn't hooked up yet. So once we actually have the equipment to receive that fiber, we can hook it up and be monitoring our complete pressure system from anywhere. So it's really, that'll be really nice to have. Otherwise, someone physically has to go to the control cabinet at 6th and Broadway if you need to see what the pressure is. So that's kind of the well 1 and 3 site in a nutshell. Any questions on that before we jump into the next piece?
Nope.
Okay. So well 4, tower 2. Couple components to that. So number 1, there's a generator up there today, but it has a manual transfer switch. So if the power goes out, somebody physically has to go up there and flip the switch to transfer power so it can be used with the generator. So we're looking to swap that out for an automatic transfer switch. So it would not require personnel to actually drive out to the site for that to work. SCADA controller replacement. So the well house was built in 2007. Let's see. The water tower was built in 2007. The well house was in 2009. So the SCADA components they're reaching the end of their service life. Anywhere from like 5 to 10 years for a SCADA computer is pretty typical. So we've already kind of pushed that out as far as we feel comfortable for such an important piece of infrastructure like a water tower and a well. So that's something we're hoping to upgrade. And then the communications piece, so SCADA right now is being transferred via FM transmitter, antenna signal, and again, with fiber now being available, looking to hook that up to the fiber network for the city's infrastructure. So those are the kind of the main improvements on Tower 2, Well 4. Chad, anything you want to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, so as far as schedule goes, this is where I do want to make a little bit of a correction from what I had in the memo. I was just talking to our environmental team here this afternoon a little bit, and so the sense of urgency, as I mentioned, was to get it done by next year. Sounds like some of the controllers and electrical components are possibly even 6 to 9 months out, so it's even more critical, I think, for us to keep this moving. So I kind of had a schedule here that I'll call it a little bit more relaxed than what I'm going to push it for this fall. I see us basically jumping right into design after this and bringing it back as soon as we can this fall to get it authorized to bid and get a contractor on board. So once a contractor's on board, then they can actually order the equipment and get the clock running on that. So that's the sense of urgency in the schedule that is different than what's in the memo. So as I
Aaron,
mentioned,
is there a process when we're doing bids and working to find a contractor where we can get some kind of indication as to the timelines that they're experiencing ordering these pieces?
yeah. So you're saying once a contractor is on board, or even now?
Would we pay $10,000 more to go with contractor B over contractor A if they promise that they can have stuff here by March or whatever it might be?
Well, if it's publicly bid and over X amount, you have to use low bid. I guess that's a Dave question, but in general, the components we're using, they're not anything fancy, so I don't think there's really going to be too much of an advantage one way or the other.
Okay.
It's all coming from the same suppliers, so
Okay.
I don't really see that being a huge advantage.
Okay.
So there is, I mean, we take the low bid on things, but there are some exceptions where you don't have to do that. What would an exception for that be?
There's a number of exceptions, Council and Mayor. Hello. There's a number of exceptions, but this wouldn't be one of them. I mean, I think to Aaron's point, all this equipment, it's actually fairly common these days for various pieces of equipment on a lot of public projects to just the time to get them from suppliers is delayed significantly. And in this case, I don't think one contractor is going to have an advantage over another if they don't stockpile these things because they're expensive and it doesn't do them any good to take that risk. So this would not be one of those situations where you can find an exception, unfortunately. But I mean, that's, I think, why maybe the accelerated timeline is what the engineers are thinking about on this project, just to get things ordered right away. But,
Okay. Thanks.
yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned it is in the capital plan here for next year, so we had estimated 550,000 for well 1 and 3, and 200,000 for well 4, tower 2 improvements. And based on what we're seeing right now, I think we're gonna wanna preserve all that at this point, so as we move into design, we might be able to refine that, but based on the prelim estimates that Chad and I have kind of been working on over the last month, we're thinking it's gonna be around that 750, so. And this would be funded via the water fund.
Right. Questions, comments?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to authorize the preparation of plans and specifications for the 2024 utility improvement project.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chad, do you ever get your spare pump on a shelf?
I have not. I'll check into that.
That was so we didn't have to.
I don't know
borrow.
what that
What
was.
was your question?
So a few meetings ago, we talked about the city having a spare pump available so we didn't have to rent one if
Oh.
one goes down. Made sense to have a backup.
Okay.
Gotcha, okay.
I
I didn't catch anything that you said, but I didn't, thank you for clarifying.
It's like, there's a foreign language there for a second.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, let's see. I think going into communications, we need to go back to something that we discussed during the work session that was part of Brent's city manager update, so. Take it away, Brent.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to do let's kind of start from scratch for folks that maybe are just picking us up and weren't watching the work session. Staff worked together on trying to develop a criteria for installing digital speed signs. And this presupposes that the council supports the concept and the implementation throughout the community. So a discussion topic for you to have before you get into the criteria. But the goal of this would be to have a policy that would help you inform the installation as opposed to taking it on a case-by-case basis based on who came into the council chambers or who connected with staff. And so preliminarily, again, concept is, reinforcing that we can only control signage on city streets. So Jonathan Carver Parkway is kind of off the map, if you will. No?
It worked on me, but.
2-lane road sections. We use the designation as a state aid road or future state aid road as a key indicator as opposed to using neighborhood streets that are primarily just used by residents. Is this, and a state aid road is, kind of, I would say common phrasing is, do other people use it to get somewhere or are you just using it to get to a certain place? And so our state aid road system, I think, conforms to that idea of a collector in addition to the future state aid roads of Levi Griffin Road, Ironwood Drive, Spring Creek Drive, and Monroe Drive. As the city grows, that system will kind of grow with it. But there are, in most cases, if not all, once a road is state aid, it'll stay state aid. And so the idea of this is to phase a plan over 5 years, and as the city grows, so would the plan. But we're working on a standard, so in most cases, you're gonna find that these speed signs are around $3,000. So, on its own, just for one, doesn't seem like a small feat, but when you start adding 10 of them, it takes up real budget capacity. The idea would be to kind of mitigate that is to put them in during construction projects. So when we do the 4th Street project, that would maybe be an optimal time in 2024 to put some in. And so we've, developed kind of a concept here. You can see the existing, there's one eastbound on Spring Creek Drive, just west of, I think that's Birch Street. There are 2 school zones digital signs on Jonathan Carver Parkway, but then you can see various proposed sections. This is intended to be the final list, but for those watching a conversation with the council on the concept, the criteria, if you support it, we can narrow down on locations. but don't want to give anybody the specific idea. It's going to be located at 123 4th Street when looking at this. And then signs depicting kind of the southern part of the community. Again, focusing in on the entrances to the downtown on Main Street and Old Carver Road. You can see one eastbound and westbound on 4th Street West, and then the two existing that are in the same location, eastbound and westbound on 6th Street West. So with that, turn it over to the council for discussion, or if there's questions or clarification points on the presentation, happy to take those as well.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have some.
Go ahead.
Can you go to the slide before that? And I just might need to be reminded, on Jonathan Carver Parkway with the school, do they only flash the speed limit during those peak school travel times?
Correct, during when
I don't post
drop
the
off
hours.
and
Yeah,
pick up.
schools only.
Other than that, they're not.
Can it be possible just to have it always display?
I don't know the functionality
Isn't
of
the
those.
speed limit only decreased during the school zone hours,
Yeah.
which is in the morning and in the afternoon?
And I think that was the
Yeah.
intent of those signs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For
Draw
that,
attention.
for that reduction in speed.
But I didn't know if it could also just give you that visibility for normal hours.
It's a
But
different speed
outside.
limit.
I realize that.
I think the sign says.
Oh, and the sign is
specifically for
really,
Yeah.
like, it really just calls
Yeah,
out.
it
So
calls
it'll
out
look like you're
school.
going 55 and a 30.
Yeah.
when you're- Okay, all right. I do like having the information of what the cost is. So sounds like roughly 3,000. Is there a way to, how much does it cost to take it in, or take it out, move it, and install it in another place? Like, could you rotate them in different areas?
You can rotate them. The sign that's currently eastbound on Spring Creek Drive has been moved, I think at least 3 times. I would offer that every time it's been moved, that existing neighborhood has kind of come back around and had speed issues. For instance, Alma Coleman off of Main Street West, we had the digital speed sign that's on Spring Creek Drive was generally in that area, was moved. It was on Ironwood eastbound or westbound on the east side of Jonathan Carver Parkway. But to answer your question, yes, I think just anecdotally from public services staff, they prefer not to do that. It's quite a undertaking, but you certainly could. There are also options where some communities have purchased speed trailers, but again, that lends to additional staff time to, what will be the right term, implement or kind of set up that trailer. So there's a variety of different options, but yes, they can be moved is the simple answer to your question.
I'd like to see that, more flexibility to move them, and then maybe wouldn't need to purchase as many over the 5 years. But I guess I just probably need to think on this some more. It just looks like a lot of light pollution. So I like having the information that we have. I can't weigh either way.
Christie?
So I like the idea of drawing up some kind of parameters for this program and then having that come back so that we can review that. I know that we have a few here and there. What I don't want is to look like we're littered with these flashing signs everywhere. I think it takes away a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not needed in certain places. When we're talking about light pollution, I do want to also be cognizant that these aren't flashing into somebody's, because into their, dining room window, because they do have, it can be quite annoying if one comes up next to you and you're not used to that. With Spring Creek, I know that that's the one that we have been getting the most correspondence about right now, but that's not considered a state aid road at this point. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Again, not opposed to looking at this, looking to see what those parameters might look like. I don't have that answer right now since we just looked at this, and technically it's a work session item that we're kind of reviewing. But again, I also don't want to look like we have littered them all over the city and there's flashing lights on every corner.
Okay, so I think having a program to manage deployment makes a lot of sense, so I agree with all of that. I think these are effective tools. I think they force you to check. A static sign, most people don't pay much attention to. This is a direct feedback as how fast you're going, and I think it even helps unintentional speeders. Oh, I need to slow down. So I think it's a relatively inexpensive and effective tool that the program we put in place will mitigate how many of them are throughout the city. I don't think we're going to run rampant with these, but I like the signs. I like the idea of having them static where they are. I think trailers cost significantly more, so I don't know that we would see a cost savings utilizing a trailer, but I would propose we go forward whatever you need to go forward to evaluate this.
Yeah, I support the structure of having a definition of where we would put them. I think it makes complete sense to me, the local state aid roads. I don't think we're going to have a lot more of those in our community. I feel like you've really identified, 90+% of what they will be in the future. So I think it's good for us to have a good definition, know what those roads are, and have a plan to add them as we're doing construction projects. And if a complaint comes before we put one out there, hey, right, we have a plan and we can address it that way. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I like having a plan. Just thinking back to the group from Spring Creek Drive who came into I think it was our last meeting in July. Yeah. They asked for 4 things, right? They asked for one of these signs. They asked for a stop sign. They asked for a speed bump, and they asked for a lower speed limit were some of the solutions that they offered. And I think, for varying reasons, 3 of those 4 we've either discussed in length already. I'm thinking lower speed limits, or it just would work to put a speed bump or a stop sign in the middle of a block. I think this is the easiest solution, and I think it demonstrates that we're listening to folks and we're getting what they want. So I really, really, really like having the requirements in place, though, because I think any one of us could say, we saw this car and it was going really fast past our house, but it would be like, no, 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 and no, because you don't live on a collector street or a future state aid street. So, and here are the requirements, and this is how we make this decision. So I like it.
Yep.
Just some kind of drilling down to the Spring Creek Drive piece. So we're kind of processing that information through the engineer's office. We haven't reached out to the residents, but initially the information I've received is the data isn't remarkable as far as Spring Creek Drive being any different than any other street. There are indications where, as you would imagine, people are exceeding the speed limit, so we've asked the sheriff's office for patrol. I would say what I intend to do is work with public services and at a minimum add a speed limit sign there. There isn't one on that stretch because frankly the digital speed signs will take budget, and so that'll be as far as the council taking action, it'll be done through either budget or construction plans and specification process. If we just use this as kind of a talking tool with residents of this is kind of like a concept, is the council comfortable with us doing that, even knowing that you haven't deployed, that was the word that I was looking for, a budget for this? Or is this, is that not appropriate based on kind of how you feel about where we're at? Do you need more time and would rather have us sit on it? Not in a negative way, but just hold back on kind of this plan, because as you can imagine, if someone looks at this map, and they didn't take part of this meeting and we showed it, they're going to expect that sign there. And if you need some more time to consider, we want to be respectful of that, and we can just kind of keep that in our back pocket and just kind of take this on as they come. So that additional feedback will be helpful in how we talk about it with residents, or if we talk about it with residents.
I think if we're going to talk with residents about it, we should probably know a little bit more what we're looking at, having some of those parameters in place? Rather than, are you talking about taking this concept right now that we just discussed and putting it out, or where, am I missing something?
No, it's kind of already out. It's just a matter of
It's definitely out.
Well, right, it's in a council, agenda,
Yeah.
but,
the question, like if someone comes in or sends an email that speeding is a concern on 4th Street West, would you feel comfortable with staff saying like, well, the council's reviewed this like concept for installing digital speed limit signs over the next 5 years? So, nothing definite, but it is a plan to implement these over the next handful of years. Or, what we're kind of currently doing would be to like say, well, we're going to investigate it through law enforcement presence, because it's not sustainable, frankly, for us. And I don't have the bill from Bolton and Mink, but there was staff time, or Bolton and Mink's time to, deploy, take in, assess the data related to looking at that speed limit on Spring Creek Drive, which, we're not going to be able to replicate without a big budget impact if that happens in other areas. So I guess I'm looking for some parameters for like discussion points and your comfort level with discussing speed, because as you know, folks, that's been kind of an ongoing piece. I think part of it is just leaning into this partnership that we've had with Victoria. Frankly, I just noticed a squad late this afternoon as I was heading back home with the Victoria logo, and they pulled somebody over right after the roundabout on Jonathan Carver Parkway at a time that we probably wouldn't have a deputy. And so anecdotally, that's working, and typically I would say that's the best way, because when there's like immediate consequence, you start to slow down in areas like the St. Peter example that the mayor has used. So, or we can send them to the council, just kind of looking for how you would like us to triage, if you will, like speed concerns, because our standard would be for law enforcement to provide an increased presence, like we did with Mount Hope Road. If we feel like we're short on signs that doesn't meet our specs, we'll add signs. And I think that's the work order system to install. We were like 2 to 3 signs short on Mount Hope Road based on the length and some of the curvatures in there. We've identified on Spring Creek Drive, at least this westbound, that we could use a speed sign there. So those would be kind of our off-the-shelf solutions. This would be elevated, but if this idea isn't fully discussed and you don't feel comfortable with it, we would just kind of park it at I'm coming up with all these puns that I don't intend. It's just part of it. So, but I want to overpromise and underdeliver is essentially what we're getting at. And so, like, it'd be helpful for me and the team to hear, like, we're not considering digital speed signs at this time. We're just going to take those on a case-by-case basis with construction. Or, yes, that's kind of like our little program to help on some of these more highly traveled. I mean, there's, I think it was 12,000 cars in that week. I mean, so Spring Creek Drive is a heavily traveled road. Folks I think underestimated that, but when I saw the data, I was shocked to look at how many cars are actually driving that section of street. And in talking to Councilmember Pershman, like, being here for a while, like, people are using that as a little kind of workaround to get to Chaska rather than going through the downtown or going up to Chaska Boulevard. So, again, this is one option. There could be several more. And so you might just say, hey, we want to pause on this and we want to think of additional options because I'm not in it, or I don't feel comfortable, at least at this point. So we could table it to the next work session, or we could come up with other options that you want us to explore that would be in addition or separate from this.
Well, I think we are considering speed signs. I think, the answers are to talk about the relationship we have with Victoria, what we've done to expand presence there during times of day. I think we residents that want to have traffic controls put in place. We explain that that has unintended consequences as well, and what we are looking at are these interactive speed signs, and we're developing the methodology as to how and when we'll deploy them. I think that's a reasonable thing to answer with. I don't see a problem with that, and I don't think we're overcommitting.
I agree. I mean, I like your off-the-shelf solutions, right? Increased law enforcement presence, just making sure that we've got the right signage already there. Those are nice, easy off-the-shelf things to do, and then just say, hey, we have this program. This is, what we're planning to implement over the next several years, and I'm fine with discussing it as, this is our concept, but these are the guidelines that we've put forth together, and that's how we address it.
I agree. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Yeah.
You two said.
I agree. I have one thing to add. Are there other options for the signs that don't flash yellow? Or like some of them have, or is it on the perimeter?
The idea.
That's the whole idea?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are,
I'd rather just see the number, the digital
yeah, there are,
digits.
There are versions.
I kind of did that intentionally. You can get them in yellow, you can get them in white, you can just have them show the number. Like this one, there's a digital message, as you can see, that says slow down. So part of the process that I'm working on with Paul and Chad and Aaron Schmidt is to if we're to kind of deploy these, what's the vendor, what's the style, so that
I'd want to be consistent.
the team only has to keep track of one owner's manual, one backup battery, because we'd like to do solar, so we don't have to run power to these, so that we can be uniform. I think accidentally sent, or not accidentally, but I did give enough detail to Paul when I sent out this model, and I think I gave him a mild stroke, because he's like, that's not the model that's on 6th Street. I'm like, yeah, we're just talking about it here. So, but it's important. I share that just showing that having the same thing and reproducing it is critical for the public services team, because if you had 3 different types of signs, that's 3 different manuals, 3 different sets of backup parts.
And I agree with that. It wasn't not just
Yeah.
that part, but just more the aesthetics, or because we've spent time, on the design Carver and just all of our
Right.
other.
So if that would be a good piece of feedback of no, we'd rather have them be white, and we don't want messaging, we just want, the number to flash up.
No smiley faces and frowny faces, please. 'Cause I've seen those signs.
You're not into the emoji.
Not into it.
So the the basic,
I want variable LED color lighting just for holidays.
Okay. Hold on, just for holidays, there we go.
But all of the holidays.
yeah.
So is this something that's gonna be coming back to us to approve as a council, to have an official vote on?
Here's a sign.
I wasn't intending that unless
Okay.
you wanted it. This is more of because I think it's high impact to residents. I want to have the council's support, and these are our talking points. But we could certainly make it into a policy if you so chose, and you could vote on it. But I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. I mean,
I like it being more of a
you-
guideline versus
you
a
c-
policy.
you ultimately control the decision making by budget for both construction projects and by operating budget.
Okay, and that's fine if everyone kind of comes to that consensus, that works for me. Once this goes out, then it becomes, that's what people see, and that becomes law, right? So there's a red dot right here. When is my speed limit sign coming? So I just want to be a little bit careful with that. If it's not something that we're going to dig deeper in to have anything more laid out than what we've kind of seen right here and with this map, that we're just ready for that, and how we talk with residents about, this is a generalized, we're working on
Yeah.
it, that it's not, this is where it's going. So, and I realize it says proposed, but
For example, we would, we're gonna do, sometime in the next few months, our kickoff to the 2024 street project, where we do kind of a in-place open house, so it'll be out in the street, not out in the street, but next to the street. But we would share probably one of those guiding principles of that would be to share we're gonna we intend to install 2 digital speed signs eastbound and westbound along 4th Street. And so that would be, like, we would do that probably regardless unless the council, and then if the council saw that at the open house or during plans and specs, and you didn't want it in there, you could say, no, we don't want that in there. But some of this stuff is just gonna happen organically. But I would view this as kind of a, like, we're checking in, because if you don't like the idea of digital speed signs at all, and if the council, if 5 of you or all 3 of you, or 3 of you said, like, we don't think they work, they're a waste of money, just put up signs and take all that money and dedicate it toward more coverage from the sheriff's office, then when we would probably reapproach how we look at doing digital speed signs, we'd use different talking points with community members when they call in, because there's enough of them out there where people are talking about them, in the same way that since we've enhanced some of our pedestrian crossings, you know, people have wanted them in kind of random spots now that you wouldn't necessarily kind of out of hand think, well, that's where you'd put flashing lights for a pedestrian crossing. But the pedestrian crossing and the speed kind of where you live and the park that you use the most tends to be the one that, like, you notice the most. And so having an idea of where the council stands on this issue would help us inform, so that we're not out of alignment with you, so that when someone comes into this meeting, we're generally on the same page.
Okay.
So I hear us generally giving you the thumbs up, which
Yes.
is a
Yeah.
measure of that we use a lot in work sessions. Do you have what you need from us? Okay. All right. Communications, anything else from you?
Nope.
All right. Eric, you want to go first tonight?
You know, I don't have any updates. The last couple of Southwest Transit Board meetings had no bearing in the city. I believe we're meeting with the new CEO on Thursday, and we'll probably have some more discussion around what affects Carver there than anything I've attended recently.
Christine?
The HPC meeting this month is canceled, lack of business items. Steamboat Days is coming up, so we know that's coming, so September 8th through 10 this year. Busy getting that done, but that's all I have for updates.
Lori?
I don't have any updates.
Joy?
I don't have anything.
All right, just a few things for me. Brent, Aaron, and I attended a housing roundtable with folks from the CDA, the Community Development folks, and then the Minnesota Housing, talking about the potential for putting together a Carver County Housing Trust Fund. So TBD on where that's going to go. I think it was more informational. I admittedly was only able to attend the first hour of that. So is there any other tidbits from that I need to add? Okay. Let's see. Had my orientation late last month and my first League of Minnesota Cities board meeting. We had a Carver Business Alliance meeting. That group is still going strong, and we are starting to perhaps maybe outgrow the conference room. It's had really good attendance, so a really good group. And then last Tuesday night was Night to Unite. We had 9 registered parties in the city of Carver, and for the last handful of years, I've ridden along with either the sheriff's department or the fire department and going to parties. So the fire crew that I was with, we hit 5 parties. So a good time, not as hot as 2022, which was always good, but still a little steamy. So I think that is it from me. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And a motion by Councilmember Hirschman
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.